very large chunk of the entire budget is this evening. Derek, did you have anything from the last one new or anything that you wanted to hit before we start running? Or
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, I'll just make that one change I talked to you about.
Yep.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. It'll be a long night, hopefully a short one. We have one change, and John Shattuck will explain the change in more detail. But if you go to Department 40, and the last line in Department 40 says TDI TIF. And if you go over to the town manager budget column, we'd like to change that $100,000 to $50,000. And to help you out, if you go to the year-to-year tab on your Excel spreadsheet or your hard copy, and line 30, if you have a line number, it says municipal and TDI TIF funds. If you go all the way over to the TM draft fiscal year 22 column, change that $100,000 to $50,000. And for those of you that don't have formulas in your spreadsheet, what that means is your total municipal expenses on your year-to-year sheet will be 1.27%. That's what it decreases to. And your estimated mill rate decreases to 17.82. And John will explain that on his last slide. And so to start, what I'll do is I'll share the PowerPoint presentation that we had in the last budget meeting. And we can proceed.
All right, first up, Shattuck. Tab 13.
12. Should be slide 29, which we're looking at.
Can anybody see it on the screen?
Yep. Department 12, slide 31.
31. Yep.
Okay, great. And John, just let me know when you want to go to the next slide.
All righty. Okay. Thank you all for your time tonight. I will be the exception to the rule tonight. You are looking at hugely complex and high dollar budgets. Mine is kind of the polar opposite to that. And so very short budget lines and much smaller amount of money. So I will endeavor to be brief. You have already received my slides, of course, and the annual report from my department. So I'm really not going to go into a lot of detail, leave time for you to ask questions. There are no changes requested in this year's staff managed amounts. When we do have a change in budget lines, and that is what was formerly the TDI audit, tax prep, and legal corporate representation issues. A $2,000 budget line was wrapped up into professional services, which at Derek's suggestion, I think it makes sense. I don't know why we're subdividing what is basically part of the same activity for such small amounts. One of the other issues that comes up is that these are since TDI is funded out of our TDI TIF reserves, out of the municipal TIF, Any monies not expended in this budget are lapsed back into that reserve, retaining its sheltering. So non-use of these funds, which I try to be very conservative with, go back to be reused again next year as needed. So I think we can go to the next one, Derek. This is just work that I do in this role, other town boards and committees and regional boards and committees. I'm sure you've already seen. We can go to the next one. And obviously stop me and interrupt at any point that you've got a question. This is just some of the highlights we've seen this year. And despite the rather odd year we had in fiscal 20, this is some good things have happened, and we still maintain a high level of interest. Fielded 2 calls just today from folks that are wanting to bring substantial projects to town. We had a brief discussion on the last item just as we were getting ready to start tonight's meeting. The bridge design has been approved and funded by the town in last year's budget and approved at the town meeting last summer. So we're moving forward. Next one. This is simply a very brief description of how our TIFs function and the 2 municipal TIFs we have, the interchange TIF out at the mall, and the downtown TIF, which covers most of Main Street and off to the side. Those are both controlled by the town for the benefit of the town. Credit enhancement TIFs, unlike a municipal TIF, which is purely a sheltering mechanism for town control revenues, do involve a rebate to a developer. The town has been very disciplined and conservative in applying a kind of but-for test that we look at projects that would not proceed but for the support made available by a TIF. The classic example in Topsham is the Highland Green project, which started back with the Highlands and the Highland Green project, which enabled the very extreme costs of huge infrastructure investment on the part of the developer out there, blasting through rock, a nearly mile-long entry road before there were residential saleable properties developed, all to be cash flow effectively. And yet at the same time, that has created tremendous new value for the town that, but for that support, the town would not enjoy. So these have been, as we've discussed in a number of TIF forums, supported by the work of economist Charles Lawton. The differential between the town's tax base and revenues as a result of our multiple TIFs, including the credit enhancement TIFs, has been really substantial. Next. And this is just the basic strategies that we've employed year in and year out in terms of how we pick and focus our projects to make sure that our investments survive a changing reality around things like retail, bricks and mortar retail, and enhancing the value where we already have infrastructure. In other words, to try to leverage what we have rather than investing in the hopes of attracting a jackpot win. Let's build on what we have and strengthen on that foundation. And it's been very effective for us now for the last dozen years. If Derek, if you want to look at that issue with the TIF line, and there we are.
Why don't we,
Derek,
hold on, John, hold on. Before we jump to a different department, let's,
Yep.
Any questions out of this one, and then we'll jump to 40.
Oh, okay, great.
And that way we can have, anyone try to use the hands, raise hands at the bottom. Any questions, comments? 'Cause I can only see so many screens. John, I do have a question.
Sure.
The year, this past year with the pandemic, many of our businesses, as we understand, were under pressure. But what I don't see in any highlights is any work that we did with the existing businesses in outreach and seeing what they need, what we can provide, where we can go. Outside of the coffee company, which I believe they probably came to us
Yep.
with the desire for that tip. What was some of the work that you would think this year would have been one of the greatest needs for economic development? What was some of the work that was done this year to help our businesses that were already here?
Well, I believe, thank you for the question, Dave. I believe it's been substantial and I, based on the feedback we've received, effective. It not reflected so much in the budget lines and highlights because it wasn't a direct expense in most cases. What I've done, and more through my role in the chamber and through the state DECD program, has been focused on pushing out, and unfortunately, you on the select board got copied on most of this stuff, getting out as much information as quickly as possible, both to my business distribution loops and through the chamber's larger business loops, email distribution lists, as much and as timely information as possible around the federal support programs and Paycheck Protection Program, the Emergency Economic Impact Program. TDI did consider and discuss at some length whether or not it was appropriate for TDI to use money that is being funded by the town, part of what we'll talk about on Department 40, to do as some other towns have done and involve in some direct lending to local businesses. And the conclusion that the TDI board came to, and which I support, was that due to the fairly limited, despite the generous additional capital funding from the town over the last 2-3 years now, that with a total available balance of about $300,000, that for TDI to take a significant amount of money, and we were thinking that something in the order of 50 to 100,000 to even 150,000 would be necessary to have any kind of meaningful impact, would in fact not be a meaningful impact. And it would be taking a tremendous amount of the money that the taxpayers had allocated for economic development investment going forward, and putting that at a very high risk. In the experience of other towns, and the practice in other towns has been to issue rather small loans to a rather small group of businesses. And if you're talking $50,000 to $100,000, even if you're lending, most towns have been lending in the area of 5,000, even if you're lending in the area of 10,000, 5,000, you're picking and choosing either by a first come, first serve, or by some kind of selection process to help as few as 10 or 20 businesses in the town. And the amount of money available there, as opposed to that being offered by the much larger scale of federal support, drove the conclusion that that was not an appropriate use of taxpayer money, that it would not have a significant enough impact to justify expending a third or of the money that the town had provided TDI for future development. Therefore, the effort was made, and it was mostly my time rather than funds, to make sure that we were pushing out as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, the information on the payroll protection, economic impact grants, and the like. And I'm pleased to report that a number of Topsham businesses were successful in applying for these. And I think in large part because of the efforts made to get that information out. That preserves, I think, a
John, I
much
guess
more.
I was looking for more, not what we're pushing out. What was our interaction with these businesses that may need help with the PPP, may need to help understand it? What was our one-on-one interaction? Not pushing information out, not considering loan program. What was our one-on-one interaction with our businesses this year? Because I don't see anything that talks about that. And you would think in a year like this is where we would have that.
Yeah. Well, both in the year that we've just been through and in the year going forward, I think those are key. As a result of the providing of information, we had some response requesting additional information, to which, of course, we did respond and provide that. I think, and I'm trying to pat my back because I'm not the one who developed the information, but I think we were very effective in screening the information and getting the best and most current information that gave people the tools they needed to make those applications. And when requested for additional information, to be able to give them some guidance to connect with commercial bankers that were the folks that were really guiding the process. For this year, and part of the calculus in deciding that preserving those funds for recovery out of the impacts of COVID, we are focusing on doing some outreach to our business community for how do we start to build out of this. And Derek was good enough to refer to me, a young man who is finishing a master's degree in municipal management, who has a strong interest in economic development and is working with his advisor to help provide some support resources for this at no cost to the town additionally. And we'll be particularly focusing on trying to organize our businesses in town to work together in identifying what support they need and speaking with one voice as much as possible so that we're consistently helping across the business community.
I got you, Ruth. Go for it.
My question, John, I'll take it a little bit further than Dave is, and I've asked this before, in the outreach, I mean, I know you don't have a lot of staff, but if anybody had time on the committee to go to some of these small businesses at the mall and just let them know we're there, and some other small businesses on Main Street and things like that, that's what I look for. And some of them don't even know there's an economic development in a sense because they're small and they don't have time to come to you because they're one or two people. So it's just something to think of in a plan that if you had, I know you don't have a lot of staff, but if you're having this other guy help, and just when they have a free time on your committee, if somebody could pop their head in once in a while to these businesses. Thank you.
Yep. And it is certainly something that is time intensive. I don't not only have much staff, I am my staff and the only staff I have. So it's always a trade-off between giving the best use for the town's time that I can. And business retention or business visitation programs, are very popular, but they are hugely capital intensive in terms of personal capital. So unfortunately, particularly in a year when people are either shut down or limited and concerned about contact, tough to do. We have done it periodically over my tenure, and it's usually done with support of an intern, one of the Bowdoin kids, or in this case, this graduate student that Derek is located, and I'm very hopeful that he'll be able to do this. That has given us the opportunity to have real contact with our businesses on a one-to-one basis.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions before we go to that next department? Nope. All right, now we can go to 40.
Okay, and this was a conversation that Derek and I had subsequently to the initial draft through of the budget. And it was just, I guess, a clerical correction on the totals and dollars involved. And of course, it's good that this has a positive net impact on this year's budget. The recommended funding had originally listed as being $100,000 for this year, as meeting a goal of 300K. And as you see now, it's 50,000 for the original target of $250,000. If you recall back to the request from TDI back in 2019 or late 2018 for the 2019 town meeting, they had asked the select board for and the finance committee for support for capital funding for TDI's enterprise fund, which had not had any for over, at that point, over 11 years. The plan developed by the Selectmen and Finance Committee was to fund $250,000 over a period of 3 years. And that has been done at the rate of $100,000 at the 2019 town meeting, a base of $100,000 at the 2020 town meeting. But as noted in the next line here, last year, an additional $50,000 was awarded to reimburse TDI for stepping up and funding the town's expenditure for the installation of critical infrastructure at a time when it could be done at a lower cost on Mountain Road. And the problem with the intended funding source for that, which was the Highland Green TIF in that area, it had not accrued the funds yet to be able to fund that infrastructure. There hadn't been enough increment, new build in that phase of the Highland Greens project to fund the new infrastructure. So TDI picked that up. The select board and the finance committee graciously reimbursed that. So that was an additional $50,000 that was funded last year as a reimbursement. So 200,000 of that plan in 2019 had been funded through last year, and the final $50,000 is the reduced amount for this year. It does total of 300,000, but 250 were the funding plan, and 50,000 was the reimbursement for the infrastructure cost.
Any questions on that line? All right, nothing. John, then you got TDI, I think, too. Or was that the one, just the one slide for TDI? No, you have TCF.
I believe you covered that last week with Rod
Okay.
and planning.
Yep, we did. All right,
Yep.
I didn't know if there's anything new. All right, one last chance for questions for John's departments. Seeing nothing. We are on to DPW.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, we got you, Dennis. You're good.
Okay. First slide's just kind of showing you people, for those that may not be familiar. We have one director, one person in the office, an admin, and one mechanic, and the other 7 fellows are working the streets, doing the maintenance, plowing the snow. We even put our mechanic out there plowing snow at times. So we're a department of 10 total. Just to go ahead and go over what we did last year, some of the highlights, and we're quite proud of them. The department did a great job. We fixed some drainage issues down in the Bay Park area, Golden Eye Drive, down in the back corner of that, and on Eider Drive. We fixed some drainage. It's about several hundred feet of storm drain pipe, and a couple of new basins were put in. We installed 2 new storm drains at about 300 feet on Barrows Drive as well. Again, these are areas that have been problems with surface water, going up into people's door yards. So those are the types of corrections that we've made on these projects. We purchased a new plow truck, which we hope to take delivery on this week. And we also have taken a delivery on a new hot top roller already, which was great. Our big paving projects for last year included the Ivanhoe Colville area and also Somerset Place, Wood Avenue, Forest Drive, and Katy Lane were done with last year's funding. Just want to touch base, and I've had this slide up probably several years ago now, but I just wanted to help illustrate a little bit better maintenance costs when it comes to blacktopping our roads and the logistics of that. We try to look at them over, let's say, a 20-year period. That's what this graph is for. The years, the age of the pavement is across the bottom. The condition is what's on the left-hand side of the graph, showing the road conditions. So as you go out, the graph comes down. So the longer the life on a road before it gets rehabbed or resurfaced, the poorer condition it gets. What I'm trying to illustrate here and show is that it's the first 10 years that are really important in a road's maintenance. If we maintain the roads within the first 10 years, it costs us a lot less capital investments than if we wait after that, because you can see out there where the graph kind of takes a dive, it goes down quickly. The condition of the road decreases quicker after about 10 years. That first 10 years, if we maintain the road with pothole patching, some crack sealing, things like that, come in and do an overlay in that 8 to 10 year period type of deal. That's what's so important to maintain our streets, is to stay after the maintenance on them. If we let them go, it costs us a lot more to rehab. And again, you can see that the routine costs are around $130,000 to a mile versus rehabbing, where we've got to go in and tear up the blacktop, put in a new base, as we're up to over almost $300,000. So I just want to try to illustrate that and answer any questions if there are any on that age and maintenance of our roads.
I don't see anything yet.
Okay. Let's see what's next here on a slide. Do you guys want the proposed streets for this
Yeah, Dennis,
year?
just so you know, and all department heads that are here tonight, we haven't seen any of these slides. So if you go through them, this is our first time. So it's good to hit them all. So don't
Okay.
worry about asking if we want to see it or not. Just hit it.
I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. This slide here now shows the proposed streets for our paving projects in this fiscal year, in this proposed fiscal year. We've heard some things. You folks heard some things from the folks living in the Arbor Avenue area. One of the areas we've done maintenance for the last couple of years is in the Arbor area. And now we're coming in to do that the road paving. Okay. So we're looking at paving Allen Street, Arbor Avenue, Mary Meeting Drive, Salem and Thompson Avenue, all over in the Arbor area. We'd like to get that buttoned up now. We held off for a little bit of that as well because of the traffic with the new Somerset Place development that was going on. So that's complete. We're trying to settle the area here. Proposed Cleve Street being paved. Cleve Street is up off of 196 on the old Lisbon Road. Tough shape that street is. If you haven't been down it, you probably should go down it and just get familiar with just how bad some of our streets are. That's probably the original pavement on there from the developer. It needs to be paved soon. West Wind is a street that's starting to show its age. It's got some cracking going on in it. It's got some drainage issues. We'd like to fix them. We'd like to get that overlaid and taken care of before it becomes a rehab street instead of just a resurface. Meadow Cross Road, that's the continuation of paving that was done in the past year or two on Meadow Cross Road. This will finish that up. This will take us from just outside that tree line. If you're coming from 196, Meadow Road has been done up through the tree line till where it breaks out by the Barton's driveway area there. This will bring it all the way around to Meadow Road. Townsend Way is the road leading into the transfer station. We'd like to get that paved. It's not that large of a street, but it sure is used by everybody that lives in town going to the dump every week. So it's a popular street to get after. Felspar Circle, East Schoolhouse Crossing, they're both in the same area right out there. They're neighboring streets. They're in need of an overlay. Again, it's just age. It's just maintaining these streets before they get to the point of needing rehab. The other one I've got on here and like to do is Granite Hill. Granite Hill, by paving that, that'll take care of that whole area up in there. Granite Hill, Oak Hill was just accepted last year at town meeting. That'll take care of that whole area and put it all in the same age bracket for streets and its quality. So it makes sense to me to get that work done up in the Granite Hill area. So that's what I'm proposing for the street paving. That brings us the proposal to $650,000 is what we're looking for in a capital budget for street paving this year. That is an increase over last year. I'm not sure, what else. Pardon?
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody. I didn't mean to interrupt Dennis, but that's an increase of $300,000. And we'll revisit this again when we come to the capital program department. But it was important that Dennis brings it out to you in this presentation.
Capital budget proposal. I'm proposing and asking for a new plow truck. I'd like to replace a 2009 truck that's been coming quite maintenance heavy on us. So I'd like to replace that truck. The $190,000 includes the plow gear, the sander, the dump body. And again, these are trucks that we use winter, summer. They're a 12-month truck. They're not just I'm calling it a plow truck, but it's a 12-month truck for us. It's used during our construction season as well. I'd like to replace our forklift with a used forklift. This is something that's used in the shop area quite a bit, taking our plow equipment on and off the vehicles, that type of work. Our sanders in the back of the trucks coming on and off. Sometimes we get into pulling some of the motors and the heads on the motors, things like that for some motor work. It's a unit that we use quite a bit. We have forks on our backhoe, our wheeled excavator type unit that we can use, but it's not as safe to operate inside the building with the engine exhaust and things like this. So this would be a propane type unit that we'd like to replace the one that we have, which actually came from the secondhand. And I was going to say it's BIW, but it's not. It's the energy plant that was decommissioned back probably 25 years ago or 20 years ago, I'm thinking. And I wasn't here at the time. It came from that decommissioning.
Dennis, actually, that came from down in New Hampshire, actually from the Navy warehouse surplus back, you're right, 25 years ago.
Okay, so it was used 25 years ago and the town got it. So we thank you, Ed. So we did get, we have gotten our life out of that truck, that forklift. The other project we have in our capitals here is the Elm Street Culvert Project. We're working through that right now with the Wright Pierce Engineering. We're looking to raise $425,000 from taxation and $250,000 from the TIF money, from TIF funding and the reserve from the TIFs. So that's our capital project for the proposed budget. Questions?
Dennis, I got a handful here, half a handful. We've had struggles getting a supervisor for your department. And it looks like it's probably been over a year, right? That's been basically empty outside of a couple week period here or there. It looks like, is it still in this year's budget to try to fill that? And if it is, what are we doing differently maybe? Or because one of the things I've taken a little project on is I don't want to be overtaxing people and have a lot of leftover money. And and yours is difficult because you plan for a winter, whether it arrives or not, right? But the staffing part of that position, what's our plans? Or is it in the budget? It looks like it's still in the budget, but what's our plans to actually get somebody?
We're in the process. We're out advertising right now on our website and also on Facebook. We have a truck driver's position and our foreman's position are both open. And
Okay.
you're right, it's been open for over a year, Dave. We had somebody come on board. He lasted a little over 2 weeks. It didn't work out for us and it didn't work out for him either. It's not unique to the field. You guys see the sign in front of Crooker's advertising for folks. It takes a special type of person to want to get involved with the field. Part of that problem is some of the dedication and the limits of what you can do outside of work time. Substance use and things like that now today make it a little bit less attractive to be a truck driver with a commercial driver's license that we're required to have. All my drivers are CDL licensed and we're all on 24/7 random drug testing.
Thank you. Back to when you, Granite Hill, what you said makes sense. Get that whole project in the same time frame. So when you got to do it, though, when you think about it, it's a relatively new road. I don't drive it a lot, but probably think it's in good shape. Will we pave that at a smaller amount of pavement to keep it on pace? Or because I'm just balancing, it doesn't seem like the worst road in town, right? Where we'd go dump money, but I understand the reason for getting it on that cycle.
Yeah. The reason I have it there, Dave, in the schedule right now is it the worst road? Probably not to most people, but what that road is, it's only got a binder on it. It doesn't have a surface. And there's been some sewer covers raised that got moved around with frost and things like that. So we've got some patches up there and I'd like to get that sealed up and put the frosting on top of the cake before we lose the cake. So that's the reason behind it.
Well, it's good information to have if people question. I thank you. And the last one, and I know this plow truck in Capitol was scheduled for last year. We didn't do it. You had talked about it starting to cost a lot in maintenance and such. Are we, and this is for all departments too, are we keeping track of that? You can go pull a report and see this 2009 vehicle is costing us X, that you could come and say it's costing us $23,000 a year in upkeep, whereas the average is costing us $12,000. And that
I have
helps when you get decisions.
Right. Your question, the answer to your question, David, is I don't have a computer program. I have a folder in the shop with receipts and the truck number on it. So I can go out, pull that folder and get you that answer. Yes.
Okay. All right. I just think it's always helpful. And I know where this one got put off a year and such, but in a year or two, there may be another request. And if it's costing a lot in maintenance, having that ability is helpful that we can balance that out.
Yep.
Any
Understand.
questions of Dennis? I'm not seeing anything, Dennis. You may be off the hook.
No, I can't find my little.
We got Gail.
Okay, and I don't know if Derek wants to wait till we review the capital, but the road budget has increased substantially. And in the past, we've always talked about the limit on manpower. How is that being addressed with that big a bump in that budget? So if that's for capital, then say so.
Yeah, Gail, last year, I'll address that a little bit since I said that to you, Gail, is last year with the economy the way it was very difficult to get contractors in, and the scheduling was far out, the prices were a little high. When Dennis and I talked before the budget last cycle, we talked about some of the things that we need to do in-house first, such as painting the storm drain basins and other minor work that frankly they hadn't been able to do because of the winter prior. I'll let Dennis speak more on that, but it was basically a combination of availability of contractors and in-house. And I think at the time we were 3 people short in public works, 3 to 4. So that was the reason for that last year. And a lot of it didn't change that much according to the capital plan that was in place for, I think, the last 5 years. But this year, Dennis and I talked, and to get back on schedule to make sure the town is keeping the roads up and the condition of the roads without major expenses, like Dennis has showed in the graph. We're trying to get up to that 700, 750 mark here in the next year or two. Dennis, I'm sorry. Do you have anything else to add?
No, Derek's right on the mark. The other thing was that some of those project scale that we had to do to these roads to get them ready were a little bit larger in magnitude, where these proposed roads won't have that same volume of work, that same amount of work and need in them. That Ivanhoe Colville area, we went in and put in new drains. We had to rebuild some existing drains, and then we relaid out the road. And so we created that sidewalk on either side of the road. So there was some major construction done in that area, and it took us some lengthier period to do that work with our limited crew. But it worked. It saved the town a lot of money, and I think it's been a great project to hang our hat on now for the community.
Thank you.
Ruth, and then I'll go to Bill. You're muted, Ruth.
On plow trucks, Dennis, or I guess mostly plow trucks, what is the average number of years you can get out of a plow truck? This one is 12 years old.
Yeah.
Almost 13. So is that pushing it, or is that normal?
Ruth, if we can get 10 to 15 years out of a truck, I think that's great.
Okay.
Anything after 15, because of the corrosiveness of the materials we're putting down in the winter now, it's tough to get beyond 15 years. We've got a truck here that we're getting rid of this year that's been here over 20 years.
Yeah.
It's in real tough shape, and I'd love to, if anybody's interested, come down, look at a 20-year-old truck at Topsham Public Works compared to a 9 or a 10 or a 12-year-old truck. You know, it's like I've always said, Ruth, you don't put your family in a vehicle and go to the Celtics game that's 20 years old, but we're expected to go out in a snowstorm and spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 plus hours sometimes plowing diligently and working that truck hard. And it's a 20-year-old truck. We're bringing it in, we're putting the baling wire to it and keeping it running because that's what we have to do, but that's not by choice. It's tough on the guys, it's tough on the equipment, it's tough to maintain the service to the taxpayer. If we could go 10, 15 years tops, that would be ideal.
Okay. I don't think really hearing that 20 years is tough on the drivers and stuff, that many people would expect that when you say it's expected. I don't think it is expected because you're giving us the knowledge and the comparison now. So now that we know and we're educated, 20 years is a long time. I agree with you. And the last question I have, and I guess it's you, Dennis, with the money that we didn't use, does that stay in the budget to roll over in the project to pave roads?
That's correct.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bill?
Yeah, my question is, I'm assuming that the town doesn't use a fleet management software to track their vehicles. And if they don't, then maybe there should be consideration considering you have Public Works, Fire Department, PD. I mean, all these vehicles are maintained. And I mean, Dennis, I have no question that Dennis's records are in order. Maybe that's something you should consider. So the town knows how, what is the cost to, run our vehicles. I mean, particularly police cars, I don't know. I've asked the former police chief on how they tracked it, They said, well, we're getting better gas mileage because we don't use as much gas, but maybe we should consider getting something where these things will be inputted and give us some more definitive answers. So we know exactly how much it's costing us. And that's open to anyone who wants to answer.
Yeah, Bill, we can certainly, this is Derek, we can certainly look into it. I know Brunswick took that on with their Public Works Department about 4 years ago, and there's a big expense to that. But we'll certainly look into it and come back and let you know what we find.
What you're saying? There's expense to the software.
Fleet management system is quite expensive, but that's okay. I mean, if it fits the needs of the board and the town, then we'll definitely look into it.
Yeah. Well, it's just like anything, as we've all found out how throughout the years. It seems anybody who is selling software, it's a racket. We're all in the wrong line of business. We should be selling software. But that doesn't surprise me. But I guess I would think that, maybe, yeah, if it doesn't make sense and the way we're doing things is fine, but, since we're always talking about how to keep the, the costs down, and if we, I guess it's, would it be worthwhile at this point? If it's not, that's fine, I mean, we can do it manually too, but,
Well, I was going to say, I
yeah.
think, I mean, even if we're not investing in software, some form of Excel spreadsheet where any department can show that this particular vehicle, especially if we change vehicles, let's say Dennis, there's a new truck out there that he wants to look at and experiment with, and he can compare that the savings on that vehicle versus others, he could come in and talk to. I mean, I think something just Excel would work too.
Oh, that's true. I mean, yeah, you could simply just put all your expenses, divide, cost per mile, whatever. That's fine. All right, I'm done.
Anyone else with DPW questions? I'm looking around.
If my internet connection has been bumping in and out throughout Dennis's entire presentation, at one point he actually sounded like Marie because of the vocal distortion. So I'm not even going to try to ask those questions and make you folks rehash, because I'm sure you've already brought them up. But if I do have anything else, I can follow up with Dennis.
All right.
An additional note, I was 20 minutes late, and primarily because my wife and I had incompatible schedules this evening. So apologies for that. Is not incompatible right now.
You can watch it on YouTube.
All right. Seeing nothing, Dennis, thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it. Oh, Edward, would you like to introduce yourself? Because I'm sure you want to.
Like it's necessary. I'm Ed Karen. I'm the solid waste director. I run a transfer station. I've been here for about 27 years now. So I've gone through a lot of different phases with it, from dump to transfer station. Just to give you a little history of myself anyway. Personnel, we are solid waste director, myself, and 2 full-time transfer station operators. And 2 part-time attendants. The part-time attendants are used for when the full-timers are on vacation on Saturdays, generally, as a rule. Because that's our busiest day and we need the coverage, so we get eyes on everything that's going on. Equipment is a 2005 JCB loader, which is starting to show its age as well. We have a 97 Daewoo forklift, 2000 S10 pickup truck that I keep running. 1 downstroke baler, 2 trash compactors, 2 trash compactor. Well, we actually have 4 trash compactor cans and assorted roll-off containers. Next slide, please. One of the things that we look at for expenditures, our bags coupon lines are going to increase due to the need for more bags. Usually at the end of the year, we come down to the end and we about run out, but I have to have an order of bags. And the bag order is generally 5,000 or 6,000. So I might only need a quarter of the order to finish out the year, but I have to buy 125 cases to get the price. So we've been falling so that those orders have been falling at the end of the year. So I've bumped that up to kind of cover that cost. Landfill closure costs have increased because of our long-term POET system, point of entry treatment system, for the an agreement that we had to sign with the DEP and the homeowners on Townsend Way, the 2 newest homes. We have to be ready to replace their softener systems and filtration systems if they go bad. So, and we've also had to add them onto our water samplings and everything else. So as part of that, we're responsible for the uptake as long as they maintain them and keep an eye on them. The outlay line has been moved into the equipment maintenance line because we use it more for maintenance of the loading docks and our can repairs and building repairs. So we kind of included that in with our equipment maintenance line. So you might see that line go up, but that's because we've eliminating the outlier line that I had on there, which was 99. Increase in the contracts due to the increase of tipping fees. Waste disposal goes to either the waste energy plant or it'll go to a landfill if the quota has been met. Our demo debris goes through Grimmel's. It's part of our contract with Pine Tree Waste. But they take it to Grimmel's for grinding and disposal. Increase in the shingles cost, we went from $48 a ton to $80 a ton if we want to recycle the shingles. So that kind of has gone up. So we're going to be reevaluating those particular items. We don't get a lot of shingles anymore, so I may just include them in with the demo debris, the heavy demo debris. So it'll be more expensive, but yet it'll still cover the costs, I believe. Obviously, the transfer, our costs go up every year with the contract because we're contracted. We have one more year left to our contract with Pine Tree Waste, and we'll be looking to negotiate a new one. And hopefully we can get some better rates on our recycling, but it all depends on if we can get this COVID over, we can get back to recycling our cardboard separate. We've already started to, on occasions when we have a truckload of cardboard come in, that we can take separate, leave it on the floor, then take care of it later on in the day. We've been doing that. So we're starting to save cardboard again. So I think as we get closer to this COVID being over with, we're going to get back into our other building and start separating that cardboard and whatnot. And we'll get our revenues back hopefully from that and recover on that situation. Because right now we're paying, $100 a ton to recycle the cardboard when we could be getting paid $60 a ton roughly. And at that cost, that's a lot easier for us to absorb than to pay to get rid of it, to have it recycled. We depend on the tokens and bags along with what we bring in from the returnable bottles and scrap metal and other items like that, where we separate our precious metals such as copper, brass, aluminum, and wire, lead acid batteries, and we recycle those separate, so we get a better price on our metals. We found that we're doing pretty good by separating those out without even putting a lot of effort in. We're bringing in a lot more revenue just in the copper and the brass and whatnot and the wire. Returnable bottles continues to be one of our better builders. We usually bring in between $350 and $400 a month on returnable bottles alone. Metal prices are still up there good, so that's all working out pretty good. Based on the last 3 years, I predict 195, depending on the markets involved. Again, with COVID-19, time will tell, but we hope to start doing all that recycling and help with the revenue. Recycling revenues, we're oddly enough, we're still doing okay with it. They're coming in, they're heading towards my projections. Our bags and coupons are heading along the same lines as well as our fees. Token machine's been opened back up since July. So that'll show a lot more revenues coming out of that, obviously, which is helping with everything else. They were down for a while during COVID because we shut down the machine because of the spread and everything. Next slide. Next slide.
That's it, Ed.
Oh, that's it. I like that. Other than that, any questions? I'll be here to answer them.
Bill?
Ed, I apologize in advance if you've already answered this question in the past. Remember we're talking about grinding glass and putting it back into an aggregate and put it in the back. Have you ever moved on to that plan because of the weights, the weight and then, the weight savings, so to speak?
I haven't been pushing for it, but I have been telling people if you want to pull it out and put it in the glass containers, that's fine with us. When we get back into the other building in particular, I'll definitely get into crushing of it because we can do it a lot better with our building. We have a crusher that sits on top of a table and goes over one of the tip dumpsters. So we can reduce the size of that glass and put it in with our inert material.
Okay.
I do plan on doing it. Haven't done it just yet, but we are telling people if they're pulling it out, put it over there, not in the trash.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Ruth?
And what about the stuff that's had the worms in it? Not compost. Is it compost or?
It was a pile of wood chips.
Okay.
And what I did with that, according to the state guidelines, was I composted that pile separate from any other
Yep.
compost I had. appears to be that it worked. I don't see any sign of them, but that, we're also finding out that they're in a lot more areas than our area, and they may have been there right along.
Oh,
But-
okay.
But it is, since this whole thing came about and it's came to light with us on ours, though it seemed isolated, the more we looked into it, they're all over the place. So there's not much we can do about them otherwise, but I don't put it into my compost pile. So, because that's on an asphalt pad rather. So hopefully those worms won't get into it, and I keep that composting. That'll kill any of them anyway. Aside from that, I just stopped taking wood grinding chips from commercial haulers that brought it in, like Asplund and all that. Because that seems to be where those worms were in, and they're composting worms. So of course they went right after that green chip, and that was creating heat for them. But I haven't seen any in the pile since I composted it. Time will tell. I'm gonna lose that compost on the backside of the property where I have invasive species anyway. So it won't be a added benefit to anything but the stuff that I want to get rid of. And
Thank
from
you.
that, I'll do.
Ed, I've got a couple. I reiterate with Bill's question about the crushing of the glass, and it's going to be even more important as the revenue for recycling has dropped. If we can remove that weight out of there, I think we got to move on it. I don't think it's tell a couple here or there. I'm with it. We got to do. It's so much weight to it. Cardboard. It's another revenue source, and we're getting there if a large truck comes in. Not always a large truck, but a nice clear day or something. Why couldn't we have some bins sitting out there beside?
Actually, Dave, we've been discussing that, Trent and I and Tim, and talking about bringing those gray tubs that we would use inside the building and set them out there. So if people have a large amount of cardboard, let's throw it in there. My biggest thing is to try to keep us from bunching up too much. So, because if that's the case, then I might as well just open the building and let everybody hug. But I'm trying to keep it separated. But that is something that we can do. And I can put another basket out there for the glass and start taking the glass out. That's nothing that I have to do anything special for. I'll be more than happy to institute both of those things right off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we can pass anybody on the banana aisle with a mask on. We're fine. But so maybe it's time for the building. But lastly, I was hoping to see here tonight something discussing hands-free payments, whether a payment app being used where you don't have to do anything with tokens. We don't have to have people hand plastic bags in and throw them away. I've been contacted by a couple people. I think I've sent it in to the town manager. I was hoping to see something tonight about what does it take to get that up and running. Some sort of service.
I guess what I'd have to ask you is just what are you looking for to get up and running? Are we looking to do like a card swiping type of deal?
A Venmo, a PayPal, something to that effect where I can, Topsham has an account.
Yeah.
Topsham has an account and I go in, you tell me it's $12. I pay via Venmo and I show you my phone. Same thing, you walk into a convenience store and show them a coupon, or McDonald's drive-through or whatever, you show that you did it.
That's very nice if you have the technological expertise to do that type of thing. I'd be more than happy to do whatever the town wants to do in that respect, but we do also have to keep track. We have to keep in mind these, I'm with them too. We're not exactly, college professionals with technology on computers, right? I'm still doing everybody's time as well. So too much of that could make it difficult for everything to happen. I'm not opposed to it, but I need to know more about what it would take to get it running. Who's going to keep track of that monetary item? How are we going to, work that revenues and everything? There's not enough there for me to get my head around to really want me to drive into it. Right now, we have plenty of other options. They can buy the coupons ahead of time. I mean, other than that, could we produce a punch ticket maybe that somebody could buy ahead of time that's worth so much money and we just punch holes? That would be very simple. When you get into that technological part, how are we going to do receipts? How are we going to do other type of items if someone should want one receipt or something? I know you can say you can do it on your phone, but again, you're talking to the dump guys, okay? So we need to know how that technological information is going to work for us.
No, I think
That's
we can
probably
get
why I
it.
haven't looked at it just yet.
Yeah, we can get it. I mean, I don't get a receipt when I buy tokens, so I mean, that's already been achieved.
Sure,
I
sure.
think we can do it, and there's ways around it, and there's people who know how to get it up and running, and I think we just need to do it.
I'm not opposed to having some sort of a card swipe type of deal, similar to paying with a debit card. We just got to have something that's going to be secure enough. We're also out there in the outback. How's that going to be? I'm not comfortable enough with the technological aspect of it, but I'm more than happy to work with it. Let's put it that way.
Right. And that's why, I don't know what it's going to take for the technology, buying anything. That's why I was hoping.
And
even
I've
some exploratory.
I made some contacts to other towns and other towns our size and whatnot. And no one else is doing anything like that. They're all doing either bags or something different. So I would be curious if you have a number or of a town that is using it. I'd be more than happy to talk to them and see how it's working out.
We're going to lead the way, Ed. We're going to lead the
Yeah.
way. Bill,
We do tend to lead the way in a lot of things, so wouldn't surprise me, but I'm always open to something if we can do it, but it's got to be at least within my technological range. I had a hard time just getting on Facebook tonight. My wife had to bail me out, so.
go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, David, actually, my question is for you. What are people talking to you due to out of social distancing concerns, or just looking for a
No.
new easier
No,
way to?
it's easier way. There wasn't any social distance, but it plays right into that, what everyone's become accustomed to, right? It's become what we've been for the last year. The context, the couple people I've had have brought it up that it would just be, you don't have to worry about having the dollar bill that'll go through the token machine, or if you have that, or go buy, stopping at Rusty's on a Saturday and buying a roll of bags just to watch them all get tossed into the trash. It's frustrating, right? Here's all this plastic bag, and that's the way we're paying.
I will say, I'm sorry. I will say at this point, though, we are saving those rolls of bags and reusing those. We're putting those back into order. It's only the individual bags that we do cut out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say my weight comments, because we buy the coupons when as ahead of time if we know something's coming up, but as a last minute, that I'm a big user of bags. I just call it Topsham money. But then again, it's been commented to me that seems kind of waste, that we're just buying bags and then we're just throwing them into the bin as a form of payment. So yeah, so I understand. I was just, because I was going to say, if people were concerned about the social distancing aspect of it, then probably a punch card wouldn't work. But yeah, I see. I just really had more of a comment than a question. So I'm done.
Yeah, Dave, if you don't mind, this is Eric. Ed and I have spoken multiple times about this over the year, and the revenue is coming in at a point where it's very close to the expenditures in that department. And understanding that whatever technology we use is going to cost, it could get down to a point where if you wanted to just let people just bring their stuff to the facility, I think maybe a few years ago you may have discussed this. I mean, everybody would be paying the same in taxes. So the largest producers of trash right now have to pay. If you did it in a way that we could make it to where any of the residents could drop off their trash at any point without having to keep track of the money, well, then that cost is going to be obviously, distributed amongst all of the taxpayers. We did a little bit of research nationally on what they're doing. I guess the point is once you get the system in place, who's going to be tracking it? Is it the tax clerk office? Is it the solid waste facility? It brings up some good points on what their focus is down there. It's separating, the trash and recycling and making sure that place is in operation. Sorry,
All those questions can be overcome, though. It's just got to make the decision who is going to oversee it, and then it happens. Those are all roadblocks that can be overcome easy enough.
Okay, we'll continue to look into it though.
Roland, have a
Any
question?
others? You got, Eddie, didn't you have something? No, that'll be under, never mind. I was thinking the truck swap thing, but that comes under, yep, never mind.
Okay. Roland, did you get your question answered? I saw your finger up.
I'm just going to comment on Dave's points. I mean, the technology now is such that you basically just need the terminal out at the transfer station, and everything else gets handled in the back office. So there's virtually nothing that has to be done other than potentially putting in a roll of paper for receipts, but that's it. So it's a lot simpler than it was when you actually had like this big bulky terminal that you had to plug in, and it's just a lot more efficient. So I think it's worth looking at and just doing a cost benefit analysis.
Yep. That's all I got.
All right, I'm looking around. You're supposed to, when you introduce yourself, you have your little saying, it's time to talk trash or something, but
That's usually after I come off after Ruth.
yeah,
This is
that's why I
after-
said introduce yourself. All right. So we are done with solid waste. Who's next? Police, I believe.
Good to go, sir.
You are on.
All right. For those of you I haven't met, Mark Hagan, Chief of Police, and we'll jump right into it with just a brief coverage of our staffing. Nothing new. If you've all been on the board for a while, then this is what you're used to seeing here. We have 16 sworn staff and 3 non-sworn personnel, which includes a full-time records clerk and a part-time records clerk, as well as a part-time crossing guard. And unless anybody has any questions, Derek, we could go forward. So roughly 93% of our budget is tied up in personnel, wages, benefits, and other contractual issues. So basically, this year's budget for the PD is 1.975 million, I believe. And what that works out to is we have about 138,000 to work with. Everything else is tied up in fees and wages and other contractual issues. So just so everybody has an understanding of what we're working with here. Professional equipment line, and this is a line that we cover all of our new equipment, whether it's tasers, if we need radar units, all the canine related costs are in here. And I just gave you a brief rundown of some of the bigger items here that we have to cover. Radar units, our radar units have to be calibrated every year, and that's roughly $700. We need to buy this year some cameras for the cruisers, and that's different than what I have in the capital line as far as for in-car cameras. This is just simply our officers are using right now their phones usually if they're on a scene and need to take some photos. And that's kind of an issue for us because the courts at some point could say that the officers' phones are part of the chain of evidence and they could ask to seize the phones. So we just need to get some cameras in the cars to take pictures at crime scenes. Storage boxes for the cruisers. We just need to get a couple boxes to put in the rear of the car. If anybody read the chief's review in the spring of last year, there was numerous comments about the fact that a lot of the equipment in the cruisers was just thrown in the back. So we have purchased this year already 2 boxes for 2 of the cars, and we budgeted for 2 more in the coming year. Right now with professional equipment, we got a $3,700 decrease, and that is simply for the fact that the new equipment for the next car, we put right into the capital line. Any questions about our professional equipment, or you want me to just keep rolling?
Keep going. I'll make a note of my question.
Okay. So uniforms and equipment, we had roughly a $7,000 spike here. The reason being is twofold, to be honest with you. Per the contract, the officers right now are getting $800 a year to purchase new uniform equipment. And once we hit July 1st, it's going to bump up to 850. The other issue that we're going to have this year is we are 3 officers down right now. So we're running 3 short. We're trying to hire right now, but realistically, with another officer that's going to retire soon, we're going to be carrying over into the new budget year, being down officers. So we threw in the budget for 3 new officers, and it's not cheap to purchase equipment for new officers. So it's roughly $3,800 if we have to fully outfit a new officer. So that covers the jump in the costs under uniforms and equipment. Vehicle maintenance, we have 11 vehicles total. 8 of them are fully marked. We do have a $5,000 decrease here from the previous budget. We try to use a local business whenever possible to save costs when we're doing vehicle maintenance. There's potential this year if we purchase a hybrid cruiser that the cost could go up. We're not really sure on that yet. We'll have to watch it if we do go with the hybrid. The reason being, if people are wondering why the cost is, we probably won't be able to use our local mechanic to work on a hybrid, and it'll probably have to go just to the dealer, and there's going to be obvious cost increase there. Fuel, we had a decrease in the budget, a significant decrease, over $16,000, but you can see what we have estimated our gallons to be used for the year and the price that we're locked in on. So that's where we came up with those costs. Training, just so you all know, we use a risk management approach to our training. What does that mean? That means that we're trying to look into the future and basically ask ourselves what can go wrong. And once we see what the issues are, what we believe the issues are, we're trying to address it through training. And, I threw up some examples here: active shooter situations, defensive tactics, less lethal munitions, mental health issues. If anybody's wondering what less lethal munitions are, what I'm talking about here are basically you modify a shotgun and it can fire what's basically like a sock round. It's a soft round. Right now our tasers that we have, those tasers are good up until about 20 feet. And that's only if it's summer and the person doesn't have, the problem right now with winter is if we did have to try to tase somebody, let's say that had a knife or some type of weapon in their hand, a hammer or whatever it may be. When people have the big heavy winter jackets on or multiple layers of clothing, the taser is ineffective on that situation. So what the less lethal rounds with shotguns would be able to do for us is, first of all, they can go from 20 feet to roughly 70 feet out. So our officers could stay at a safer distance and, try to take a weapon from somebody. While I'm talking about that, one of the issues that you've all seen if you're watching the news is dealing with people with mental health issues. And that's why it's listed here as well. There are roughly 43 million people in the United States, 43 million adults that have some type of mental illness. And the estimates are that fewer than 8 million of those people actually try to seek assistance and are on any type of medication or some type of treatment. So with that being said, there are a lot of people with mental health issues that law enforcement keeps dealing with. 1 in 4 people killed by law enforcement right now are in some type of mental health distress when the shootings occur. So the simple fact is, when I'm talking here about the risk management approach and when I'm talking about less lethal munitions, it's an opportunity for us to try to save lives. And that's just part of the process when we're looking at our training. The medical line, that's a new line this year. Basically what this is going to cover are Department of Labor mandates. We're supposed to have hearing tests every year, or at least offer hearing tests to our officers. With the start of COVID, all the officers are mandated to have N95 masks, and officers have to be tested for that annually. We have new hires that we're looking to bring on. They have to have medical tests. We also have to provide psychological and polygraph examinations for each. And those are $600 each test. Psychologicals are $600, polygraphs are $600. So it adds up quickly. the state is now charging us if we send up a test to Augusta, whether it's a blood alcohol test, a urine test, any type of drug test, we're getting charged by the state. So we needed a line item to put those items in. And the officers need to get checked for hepatitis. And it's $320, $324 for a full series right now. And it's $48 for a titer. We're actually going through the process right now of getting all the officers checked. So if the question is, what's the medical line for? These are the basics right here that we needed to cover. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure, and nobody could tell me where these items were coming out of previously. So I thought it would be wiser just to have a medical line that we could look at and know what was coming out and what's coming in. Derek, I think we're good. I'll just go forward and then we'll hit the questions later.
Yeah, Mark, if you don't mind, this is Derek. Just to comment on Mark's comment. The previous administration this isn't new money. This isn't new expenditures is what I mean. This money was coming from different lines within the police department. We're just not sure where each of them were taken out of. That was the previous administration's way of dealing with these particular items. Thanks, Mark.
Yep. So if you want to go to the next slide. All right. And then capital expenditures, we've got in there for one new fully marked Ford Explorer. We just went through the purchasing. So for the previous car. So with that being said, the average cost was roughly $35,000. A hybrid cruiser would add about $3,000 to the cost. And I'm sure you're all aware, but roughly 2 years ago now, Ford changed the design of the cars, which changed the whole interior of the car, and none of the equipment that used to be in the Ford Cruisers would fit anymore. So right now it's costing roughly $12,000 to buy all new equipment for the cars and the lettering and the labor to get everything installed. So we're probably 2 or 3 years away from having all the cars switched over, and then the $12,000 number will drop significantly because we won't need to buy all new equipment every time we buy a car. The other piece that's in there that I think is very important is the 8 WatchGuard in-car camera system. And I realize $60,000 is a lot of money. With that being said, the expectation of modern law enforcement, I can read this to you, but I know you're seeing it. But the expectation these days is that vehicles will be equipped with an in-car camera system or body cameras. These systems allow for documentation of interactions between the police and the public. They give us a training opportunity. And when I say training opportunity, here's the basics of that. When we hire somebody and we're doing a field training program, we're with them all the time. But the simple fact is, in Topsham, officers are generally by themselves when they're on traffic stops and when they respond to calls, depending on what it is. We get complaints, and it basically comes down to be honest with you, a he said, or he said, she said type situation, because we don't have another officer there oftentimes. Where I can tell you from where I just left, which was Lisbon, we had the in-car camera system. And, I had over half dozen complaints over the 4 years I was there. Every time somebody made a complaint, I was able to pull up the video from that incident, and I would call the people back and have them come in, or I would offer for them to come in and watch the video of, whatever transpired with me. And everybody, when they found out, to be honest with you, that we had the system and I had everything on video, declined to come in, and the complaints ended there. So it can help with complaints. It obviously, shows greater transparency because people can see what our officers are doing. We can see, if we're not with them, what they're doing. It reduces citizen complaints. It reduces use of force. And generally speaking, what they have found is people are more polite. That's one of the reasons it reduces use of force, both not only on the law enforcement side, but on the citizen side. When people know they're being videoed and they know it's going to be something that's going to be held on to and it'll be able for review, people are more polite with each other. I agree that it's a lot of money at $60,000, but when you add in the civil piece of potential lawsuits, even if we get into a crash, these systems will monitor the officer's speed and so forth at the time of the crash. whether their brakes were on and so forth, I think that the town would be, I think it's a wise investment for the town. And those are all the slides I have, but I assume we want to go back and cover some questions.
Yeah, so I'm gonna, Pat, you were first, then I'll go to Bill, and then Gail, because you can't use a little yellow hand.
Hi, Chief. This question may be better suited for Derek because it does go across various departments. But on that gasoline line item, you had mentioned that you're locked in at that $1.70 per gallon. Is that locked in for the entirety of the fiscal year?
That's a contract that MDOT signed for their fuel prices. It's surprisingly low.
That's what caught my eye, Derek.
Yeah, it is low. So this allows us to get gas over at MDOT at that price up through May of next year.
Okay, great.
$1.70 is for gas, and just to remind you, the diesel prices, I've budgeted for $2.46. That was a diesel contract price that MDOT settled for. However, that's based on biofuel, which is currently being argued right now. So that diesel price could go down to $2.06 if it's straight up diesel. That's kind of where I was kind of hedging the bets on, okay, what if gas for some reason goes up a lot in that next month, or we don't get gas from MDOT? That would kind of cover us. So basically budgeting high on the diesel if it's biofuel, and the regular $1.70, for gas in that part. Plus, I think in the past we've over budgeted in some respects across town in gas. And I think the department heads did a pretty good job at really looking at the mileage actually being used and making sense of it. So that's where those prices are, and they're good to May 22.
Wonderful. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate it.
Bill, then Gail, then Matt.
Yeah, it's hard. I got fat fingers for working a phone. Anyway, Chief, my question is concerning the in-watch car camera systems are $60,000. How many years do you expect to get out of these before the next latest and greatest system would come along?
We're thinking it'll be between 8 and 10 years. The system that we had, and I can only go by my experience in Lisbon, but those cameras were roughly 8 years, still going strong. When I would ask the salesman, because I was trying to put it in our CIP in Lisbon, to be honest with you, and they said that those are a very sturdy camera and they can last a good 10 years. So I've got a breakdown somewhere here that you folks don't have of when we'd be budgeting for it, but I roughly planned it out as 8 years. We'll probably be looking to start replacing some of them.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I only bring that up because it seems like, especially it seems more on the EMS side with cardiac monitors, we have to replace them every 3 to 4 years because the next latest and greatest that works just a little bit faster, it comes along and we need to buy it, and it's always seems to be not inexpensive. Moving on from that, I support you buying the hybrid. My question to you is, doesn't BAF have a hybrid? I guess my question is, have you speak to any other police departments that use them and can, figure out, what kind of savings are they getting? Obviously they're not going to use as much gas, but because it doesn't seem that you're factoring that in to anything.
Yeah. So Bath, Falmouth, the state police, all like the cars very much. Brunswick was the only one that, to be honest with it, that didn't like the hybrids. So they're all three very different communities in their layout. Obviously, state police cover a wider range, but they all like the cars. And in fact, when we were talking about a couple months ago, I was more than willing to, let's get one and try it out. So with that being said, I just wanted to warn people the cost could go up a little. I think the opportunity to try just one and see how it goes, and that's all we've asked for this year. I'm not against it at all. I just want people to know that I know that the mechanic that we use in town here has warned us that the costs could go up. Now, with that being said, you don't get as many oil changes because the car is not running as often. So there are also ways that we could save money. I
Right.
don't, with that being said, I'm sorry, I kind of circled your answer. I don't have exact numbers to throw out to you right now as far as savings or so forth.
Okay. Well, yeah, I agree with your thinking in that regard. So, yeah, I think it'll be a good experiment, and this will sort of go back to my original comment concerning fleet management systems. You know, now if we have decent records on our gas, because I remember when we went from Crown Vics to the Explorers, it basically was going from an average fleet of 14 miles a gallon to 18, and now we're going for something which in theory should do better than 18.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested, just on a personal note, to see what kind of savings that would be that can be passed back to the taxpayers.
Yes, sir. I don't disagree with you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we will go Gail, then Matt, then back to Pat.
I actually have two questions for you, Mark. The softer munitions is what you said. Is there ever, my impression of that is that they're going out, and this is a non-lethal type bullet. Is there a point in time where the officers might be in danger because they need something stronger or more lethal? Second question, a good start with the car cameras. At what point in time are you thinking about getting body cameras? That's it.
Well, I'll go to the first one about the less lethal munitions. So generally speaking, you only use those if you have at least 2 officers. The reason being, let's say somebody's standing there with a knife. You would have 1 officer available with the less lethal. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't work every time, but it's a good option. So what happens is you have 2 officers. One would have the less lethal shotgun, in this case of what we're talking about. And then the other officer would be there with the firearm just in case, for whatever reason, the less lethal doesn't work. So, you know, the problem with the taser, and it's not really a problem other than the fact we're in Maine, is again, it doesn't work always in this weather condition. And the simple fact is what people think of as 20 feet being, you know, as far as 20 feet away, sounds like a big distance unless somebody's running at you. And then you find out real quick that that's not a long distance. So that's the nice thing about the less lethal. It also gives you a little more room, a little more time to react, whether it's to back out of the situation or if you have to react and go to lethal force. So I think I answered your first question, right? Okay. And I apologize. Can you refresh me on the second question?
When are you apt to thinking about buying body cameras as well as the car cameras?
Great question. And I'm not sure, to be honest with you right now. The reason I would rather go with the in-car cruiser mounted system is because most of our complaints come from traffic stops, to be honest with you. And most of our work is traffic stops. So my feeling is, to be honest, if we're most likely to have, whether it's a complaint or whether we have some type of liability issue, it's going to be from the officers being in the cruisers. And again, this can monitor not only our speeds, but whether the officers were using the brakes at the time. It's going to monitor all the traffic stops. The other issue is, to be honest, they haven't really still figured out everything with the body worn cameras. You know, everybody was suggesting that was the best way to go. But then when officers started wearing them and were going into houses and into different situations, people started complaining that we're maybe crossing a barrier into a person's private rights. So there's a lot of arguments back and forth on when the camera should be turned on, when they should be turned off. The good thing about the car system is it's on when the lights go on. So if the officers are responding to an emergency, those systems come on automatically and they remain on. The officers aren't in a position to shut them off. Even if the officer gets out of the car, they have a microphone that they wear on their uniform and the microphone stays on. So yes, if they step out of the cruiser area right in front of the car, you might not see what's going on, but you can at least still hear it. And again, I just think right now we're more than likely to have an issue around the car than we are in an apartment somewhere where the officers wouldn't have the camera.
May I ask one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
You said the camera goes on when the lights go on. I'm assuming that's the flashing blues on the top. is there ever an occasion where it should come on when the lights aren't on?
Well, and let me correct myself. The camera is passively filming all the time. So what happens is when the lights go on, the camera actually backtracks. I think you can set it to different times. It can backtrack to a couple of minutes, or I can tell you in a situation, we had an officer that did not have the system on, didn't have his lights on, and got into a crash. We were still able to pull that up. So I apologize for the way I originally said it. It's just the camera is active when the lights come on, but it's also passively constantly taping.
Okay, thank you.
Matt?
Thank you, Chief. Very excited about the cruiser, and I think this is the perfect way to see if whether or not it's going to work for us. And I would have to echo Bill's sentiment about really maybe just paying attention to tracking the fuel costs with that particular vehicle over the next year. Of course, provided it gets through budget town meeting. My only other question, and this is really tiny, was specifically about the less lethal ammo. Would that go under training, or would that go under an equipment section?
I believe I put the actual ammo under equipment for that. Yes, and again, I didn't list every single thing we'd be buying when I did put some things up here on the up on the slides. But and the other thing I should tell you is the ammunition for the less lethal is far cheaper than the tasers. We have to, with the tasers you saw earlier on one of the other slides, we had the prices listed up there for what it's costing us annually. And it's fairly expensive because every year the officers have to fire at least 2 taser rounds during training. And those rounds are roughly $36 each round. Taser is a sole provider of their equipment. So they can afford to charge whatever they wish to charge, to be honest with you. With the less lethal rounds, we also have to train with it every year, but the rounds are $4 to $5 every round. So it's considerably cheaper than the taser. Now, with that being said, I don't foresee us hopefully having to use it much, but again, it's a great opportunity. It's a great tool to have if we need it.
Thank you.
Matt, this is Derek. I just have my notes in front of me. So the ammo is under firearms training.
Thank you, sir.
Pat? Cohen?
Chief, quick one. You had mentioned that Brunswick does not like the hybrid vehicles. Why is that? Do you know?
They didn't feel that one of the big issues I heard from them was that they didn't feel there was as much pickup in the cars, and they have a bigger area to cover than Bath. But with that being said, and again, I'm just going by what I'm hearing from people. The state police haven't found that at all. Falmouth is again kind of in the middle there, and they haven't had a big issue with it. Now, Bath, when I asked them about it, freely admitted that they're a much smaller area and they haven't noticed it. But again, they admitted when I was talking to them that they're in a small compact area. But state police would be the best judge of that, I would say, for right now. And they said they haven't had any issues.
Thank you.
Would say if we got pulled over doing 85 on the highway, the cop would remind us that you're only saving yourself like 30 seconds. So the pickup probably isn't that big of a concern. Chief, I do have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
You referenced the boxes in the cruisers coming from the report, and that triggered my thoughts. There were multiple things, and I don't see any lines for in the station itself. The one that always has stuck with me since we got this review of the department was cleaning of the weapons and safe discharging. There was a specific, and I've tried to flip through the book to find it, but they referenced specifically having the ability to not dry fire, but just assure that the gun is emptied when dry fire. Talked about shades on the first floor to give a little safety to the officers. Is there a line in here that we're tackling any of that this year? Those specific recommendations that there is a cost, when you start talking shades and some of these weapons cleaning things, I'm sure there's a cost that we'd have to account for.
Yeah, so the weapons cleaning room, to put an exhaust fan in there would be significant cost for this building. And to be honest with you, we have bigger fish to fry right now. We can clean our weapons in the Sally Port. We can do it in a booking area that's wide open. That's just not really high on our radar right now. So I spoke with the supervisors, I've spoken with the union, and nobody has raised that as why aren't you addressing this right now? And as far as the shades, we have briefly looked at certain things as far as maybe putting tinting on the window or some type of shade. And again, to be honest with you right now, we're dealing with bigger issues than that. So we haven't got there yet.
All right. I hear you when you got bigger issues, but it's just, I want to make sure, come next June, if we wanted to get something done, we have something. I just want to make sure it's on the radar and we have money for things.
Yes, sir.
Those were the questions I had. 3 openings, it comes down and it's finding, what have you, and it's not just Topsham, it's everywhere. Are we doing anything different to outreach to find than we have in the past to try to fill those a little quicker and be a little more appealing?
Yes, we have been reaching out to all the colleges. We are working with CMCC right now. I'm on a criminal justice board for CMCC where we've offered up our services to just do little things like go and practice mock interviews with the students, something to basically get our name out there in front of the students so that they'll remember us when it comes time for hiring. In this particular, we just interviewed 5 applicants last week. And in that particular scenario, we had used Indeed. You're probably aware Indeed has a paid account and a free account. We used the paid account and it got us 25 applicants. Now, half of them basically had no idea what they were in for and didn't have any of the qualifications that we were requiring. But the other part, the other group, there were some people that were very interesting to us. We talked to them during the interviews about how they had heard about Topsham PD, and we were getting information back to show that some of them had heard of us through the Indeed account. So that was a good investment, to be honest with you.
Thank you. Any other hands for the chief? Looking around. You are free and clear.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief. Next up, I think it's last and final, which is impressive at 7:40. I think it's Fire Chief.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Chris McGlaughlin, the Fire Chief. I'm going to try to make this quick as well. A quick overview of the department. As you can see on the screen, we have a Fire Chief and EMS Director who also serves as the EMA Director. 4 full-time firefighter paramedics, 1 per shift is what that is. A complement of 39 currently per diem and call members. And then we also have 4 SMCC college students that are here, but that's during schools in session and they come and go during classes and all that kind of stuff. A recap of our call volume over the last 3 years. As you can see, we were up last calendar year of 2020, 1,800 calls, a little over. That's a significant increase from the year before. And that's also with a very, very slow March and April. When COVID hit, everybody's hid in their houses. We're afraid to go to the hospital. We're afraid to go anywhere in March and April, and our numbers were down. I was actually a little concerned that we may have over projected revenues because it was looking like it was going to be a very slow year as far as EMS calls go, but that, as you can see, picked up. A quick recap of revenues, which we've been paying a lot of attention to over the last few years. They are up significantly again. We projected 420 for the last fiscal year, and then actually came in at 540,000 total revenue. So in this fiscal year coming up, I went with that number And we're on pace right now to hit that number in this fiscal year. So I think 540 is a good estimate as far as revenues go for transport fees. And then when we get to the expenditure part of the budget, the biggest difference that you're going to see comes with the payroll section, payroll and benefits. There was an increase in overtime. Last year was the first year we had an overtime line. Overtime used to come out of part-time payroll, and we decided I wanted to better track where our overtime was, so we made a separate overtime line. That 25,000 was a rough estimate, and we're on pace this year to have over, we're a little over $50,000 in overtime. However, some of that is due to COVID. Some of that is due to we were down a full-time staff or two, but generally my full-time vacancies are filled by per diems. What we found is when COVID hit and through the summer, there were a lot of per diems that didn't really feel comfortable exposing themselves as much. And per diems have full-time jobs and they're exposed to COVID there. So what happened was a lot of our per diems that work a lot here ended up working a lot extra. But I don't really see COVID changing in the next, 4, 5, 6 months. So that was a huge piece. The other piece of the overtime is we currently pay people at 53 hours is when the overtime starts for my full-time employees. They actually work a 42-hour work week, and the industry standard across all fire departments is to pay them at the 42-hour work week. So they start getting overtime after they're scheduled 42 and not the 53 that they used to be paying. So there was an adjustment for that as well. Part-time line, that was decreased because we, if you look at the line below, we wanted to convert some of the part-time salaries over to a full-time position. So when you convert it, you can take less money out of the part-time line. That part-time line also does include a $1 an hour wage adjustment for my per diems that would bring an EMT basic up to $15 an hour. The EMT basic right now currently gets 14. So we wanted to bring that up to 15. And when we did that, we bumped the advanced and the paramedic up as well, $1 an hour. That line also includes the Earned Paid Leave Act that started in January. Come July, some of the per diem staffs will have enough to take time off for the earned paid leave time. So I estimated that at about $10,000 a year that we would have to cover. So we added that into the part-time line as well. The full-time line, we wanted to convert one per diem employee to full-time status. So the cost of that is benefits. The salary is is a wash essentially. So you're really paying for benefits to do that. We're doing this for a couple of reasons. I know last year when someone on the finance committee, I might've been Gail, asked me what our goal was for full-time staffing. What number did we want to get to? And 8 was the number that we were looking at long-term. That's the long-term goal. And that would give us 2 per diem and 2 full-time staff every day. So I'm trying to pick away at that number as time goes. We need a good balance of per diem and a good balance of full-time. The problem with per diems is this isn't their full-time job. So we had several instances this last 6 months where we had one person working on a Saturday. On Christmas Day, I had one person scheduled, and per diems have other full-time jobs that they're obligated to. So having full-time staff helps those scheduled vacancies. And I think it's important for us to make sure we have full-time staff here to cover our ambulance. I'm trying to plan for the future. We got some projects coming ahead that's going to increase our EMS call volume. We got an assisted living facility going in Highland Green on Audubon, Tedford Road housing development. We got 130 mobile home units going off 196, 3 4-story apartment buildings in Highland Green, the next phase of Highland Green. So there's all those things long-term are going to put an increased burden on our EMS staff. And that's why we want to make this conversion from one per diem member to convert them to a full-time status. That's pretty much it as far as my major expenditure increases. I know someone had a question. I mean, professional services was a line that went up, and that's directly tied to our EMS revenues. So the more EMS revenue we get, the more I have to pay the EMS billing company. So that number goes hand in hand with them. That's at the professional services line. And then I know for capital, we had 2 cardiac monitors, but I believe capital is being talked about on Thursday. I can cover that tonight, Derek, if you want, or I can wait till Thursday.
Chris, go ahead and mention it. The idea was at least to hear from the department heads, and
Okay.
then when
Yeah.
we hit capital on Thursday, we'll just briefly. Go
Okay. So we had 2 cardiac monitors scheduled for replacement this year in the capital plan. Our cardiac monitors recommended manufacturers replacement is 7 to 10 years. Our cardiac monitors are currently 7 years old. They were purchased in 2014. So by the time this budget's approved, they get ordered, they'll be close to 8 years old. The cardiac monitors is the most important piece of equipment in an ambulance. So it is prudent of us to make sure that we have the most current technology. And like I said, they have a 7 to 10 year lifespan, and they're hitting that mark now. So they were in the capital plan for this year, and we'd be buying 2 of them.
Questions for the chief? Gail? You're on mute, Gail.
Question on overtime. You were saying that you're paying overtime after 42 hours. I thought the Department of Labor required overtime after 40. How do you?
So, yeah, actually, we're paying overtime after 53 hours. The Fair Labor Standards Act for fire departments sets the overtime at 53 hours. That's because of the schedule they work, and it's an 8-day rotation, not a 7-day rotation. So it's actually an 8-week cycle, and they average it out. But the industry standard for most fire departments, and you can check anywhere, is they pay them after they're scheduled 42 hours a week. So my employees work 42 hours a week. That's their average work week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill?
I just have a quick comment. I remember for Chief, I'm pretty impressed to see these numbers, especially in the revenue stream. I remember him bringing these proposals to, before us when I was on the board, and now we're starting to see, the fruits of their labor, and it's very good. So good work. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Chief, when I look at your budget, and I understand it's in that payroll, your budget is 50.6% of the increase in this town spending this year. In a year where it's been very difficult, very hard, you just had a year where, how many full-timers have you been down throughout the year?
I was down 1 the entire year. And then I was down another 1 for like probably 3 months, 4 months-ish.
So we're in a year where you worked and you struggled to have to backfill those times and probably overused your per diem, would be my guess, right? Because you had all these shifts we got to fill. I'll be honest, I was going to say, knowing that you haven't had a full flux of staff, I'm not going to be supporting the additional person this year. We've had to overuse that per diem line to backfill because we've been so short-staffed. Additionally, we've been told for a while now that the deputy chief is going to be retiring. And I don't see anything discussing what the plan is. Are we just going to move on with that as it's always been? Or do we have some other idea on how to serve the town differently? Knowing that that position came years ago when we merged the 2 departments, and we just created that so we didn't move any. Is this still the best route that we have? I don't see anything in here discussing what the plans are, though I do see administrative payroll with one of the highest increases in the town.
Yeah, I can comment on both of those comments, Dave. I just want to clarify, we're not, by my proposal, I'm not adding any staff to the daily workforce. I'm still have 4 people per day and 3 people per night. I don't want to be in a position where we were last year, where I have a guy out on workers' comp for 4 months, and then I have per diems working 70 or 80 hours a week. That's why I wanted to transition to another per diem person in the full-time status. So I'm not really adding anybody to the daily staffing. We still employ the same amount of daily staffing. So that was the thought and theory behind that, and the plan for the future. As far as the deputy chief goes, he hasn't officially given us a retirement date. He's told us that he plans to retire at the end of May when his license expires. The state might be granting license extensions due to COVID, where they can't get the CEHs in training. So he's talked about maybe the end of June. My plan for that position is essential to what we do. If anything is shown over the last 8 to 12 months, EMA, you never know when you're going to have a natural disaster, pandemic, anything like that. And It's been invaluable to our department. My plan is to kind of rewrite the job description. I want the deputy chief going forward to be more fire ground related, more incident command related. Mike Labby did come over from the rescue side, so his expertise in the fire side of the coin isn't there because he came from a rescue service. So I'm going to rewrite that job description to better serve the community, to have another fire officer out and about on the streets when we have those calls. So.
In my last comment question, since September 1st, 11% of our EMS calls have gone to Bodenham. And when we're talking about utilizing our staffing appropriately, it seems again, they're starting to become a strain on the Topsham taxpayer. They've been 66 out of 584 calls. And I understand we bill and we get a payment from Northeast Ambulance, but those don't, the reality is those do not cover if we have to call in, if we don't have staff. And I don't know how you use your overtime. Do you call in to have coverage? I don't know if you do any of that, if that affects it. They're starting, it seems since September, they're becoming a drain again. I'll say it again, and I've continued to say it. They need to step to the plate and they've got to figure out a way, because we're not going to fund another town's services.
Yeah, so Dave, I knew you would probably talk about Bodenham tonight, so I ran some numbers for you. Yes, we do get paid from Northeast when we go to Bodenham, and we also bill a patient. So there is a revenue stream from that. We did 114 calls last calendar year in Bodenham 2020. The previous calendar year, we did 91 calls in Bodenham. So it was up roughly 20 from calendar year to calendar year. I will say I ran the numbers on how many times Brunswick covered us last year, and they covered us 26 times on EMS calls. And I can recall one time where we had to use Brunswick because we were in Bodenham out of those 26. So Brunswick, that's, for me, that's a low number. Out of 1,214 EMS calls, we only used Brunswick 26 times. We managed to cover 1,190 of our own calls with per diems coming back, call crew coming in, me and Mike running some calls, things of that nature. So those were the numbers that I ran today.
Yeah, I understand, but they're still putting a strain, right? They're still creating a strain, and it doesn't matter the money that we bring. They are, I think you just said 120 calls for that fiscal year, but in the last 23 weeks, they did 66 calls. So, and it may average out, I understand during the pandemic, nobody calls, right? The whole world stopped. And I recall that with 9/11, nobody ever called. It's got to be something we keep an eye on. If we want to continue to, if we're going to have to continue to build our department and our staffing, we can't have anybody else being a drag on us. In my comment, I will save for Thursday night when it comes to the cardiac monitors.
You're still muted, Dave.
Yeah, we'll go Ruth, then Bill.
I just want to say, Chief, I think you do a great job, and I always like to throw that out there. And I should have complimented some others tonight, but I didn't. I should have. But also, I do have a concern, even though I know you have great leadership and you bring us stuff about Bodenham. I really don't think we're in a position to help cover. And the longer we do it, Bodenham will not step to the plate and do something for themselves. That's my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. And I do want to make clarification that our agreements with Northeast, not necessarily Bodenham, but Bodenham is the route of us going up there, because they contract Northeast and then we back up Northeast. So maybe it's time we revisit the fee amount for Northeast and entice them to cover their own calls more often. That's certainly a discussion we can have down the road too. So,
Bill? Bill? Bueller? Bueller?
Yeah, I gotta start using my iPad. I don't know why I stayed up. My only comment was, now that Bodenham has taken their part-time or their acting town manager, made her the permanent town manager, then maybe that can be addressed now directly to the person who can now make policy. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Matt, were you trying to hit something?
Yeah, just to clarify, based on what you just said, Chief, and what Bill just sort of asked. So you're not actually, Topsham has a contract with Northeast Ambulance, and their route is in Bodenham. And it just so happens that when we cover for the ambulance service, we have to go to Bodenham. We get reimbursed for it, but it's not like we can have a conversation with Bodenham municipal officials and say, look, stop telling your people to call us, right? Because it's a contract that we have with the Northeast Ambulance Service and not with the town of Bodenham.
Yeah, so to clarify, Bodenham doesn't call us. When Northeast can't cover a call in Bodenham, we go to back up Northeast. So Northeast owns the contract with the town of Bodenham. Part of their contract with the town of Bodenham was to have a backup ambulance service in case they can't respond. Well, when they approached me, I wasn't going to do that for free for Northeast. I said, if we go to Bodenham, I'm charging Northeast $250 a call because they are getting the contract to cover them. So if you're getting paid to cover Bodenham plus the transport fees, we're not going to cover you for free. So that's where the fee comes into when I bill Northeast for our calls.
That's what I thought. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify there because it is kind of a confusing issue. But I understand what you're saying, and I definitely understand what Dave is saying as well. I mean, I got charged $900 for a transport from Bay Road to Midcoast. So if we're only getting $250 for each trip, it might be time to revisit that contract with Northeast. Just a thought.
No, we can certainly do that.
A for-profit ambulance service. Yeah, just some background. Northeast contract with Bodenham. Bodenham was paying $2,500 a year for their contract, and it went to $25,000. So, which is still a steal, right? You're getting hundreds of calls for that amount, and so just so everyone understands what there's a fee to it. Like Chief had said, that they contract with them. Northeast is a for-profit organization.
Dave, when did it switch from 2,500? That is astonishingly low to me. Was that recent?
Chief, it was probably in the last 15, 18 months, wasn't it?
It was, I think, in 2018.
Okay.
Sounds like bait and switch.
There are some private ambulance services. There are some private companies that will cover towns for free just to get the revenue from the patient transports. But those days are coming to an end, and that's where the 2,500 was originally their price. They were essentially doing it just to get the fees from the transports. When Medicare reimbursements and things of that nature didn't go nearly as quickly as the price of the equipment went, they had to probably adjust their contract price.
Yeah, I think Matt was onto something. I think we need to charge them more than they're getting in revenue from Bodenham.
This year, we will eclipse their contract price. They will have paid us more than what they got from Bodenham.
Good.
But we can still revisit that.
Where did you go, Pat? There you are.
Yeah, and Roland just hit on part of it with the chief, but Chief, did you say that the reimbursement is $250 per call when we go up to Bodenham?
That is correct. And then we also bill the patient. So I bill Northeast every month for the amount of calls I do in Bodenham.
Okay, yeah, and I guess I'd just be very curious to see kind of how the numbers shake out with, Dave, you hit on it, is the 250 plus the patient cost, is that really covering the fair share of the total budget? If we're talking 1,200 calls per year total, and 114 of them are going to Bowdoin, is that Bowdoin revenue a good offset to the portion of the budget that those 114 calls are hitting.
Yeah, we average about a $400 to $500 per call. Last time I checked, it was last year, it was like $431 per call, and that includes all calls because it's easier to run the number that way. So if you ran that off 100 calls in Bodenham, because not all of those 114, some of them were fire calls, but less than 10, you're looking at 40,000 probably in patient care revenue, and then another 20 probably in the mutual aid contract. Through January of this fiscal year, from July 1 to January, Northeast has paid us 17,500.
Okay.
So
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other hands? Looking around. Roland, you're unmuted. Were you going?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Chief, I'm not seeing another soul.
Wow, it's 8 o'clock.
Pretty good. Not where I thought we'd be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
So folks, we are back at it Thursday night for our final departments. And then we'll go into our own deliberations and come back. So if the 5 members of the board and Derek can stay on, I want to say if we can find a date where we can, 5 members of the board of selectmen stay on. I want to nail down a date where we can start our deliberations because we'll be wrapped up Thursday. Thank you, everyone.